Alright, now that we got Substance Painter open, I can now begin the process of going ahead and bringing in our model so we can start painting on it and making it look awesome. So I tend to use a lot of the basic stuff that are basic settings and brushes and materials that Substance Painter tends to come with. If I do bring anything into the editor that I'm going to use, I'll probably pull something from my library, but I don't think I'm really going to do all that much in terms of specific customization. So what I'll do is I'll go to File, we'll go to New, and it's going to need our mesh that we are going to need. Now, if you're new to Painter, there's plenty of videos on Algorithmic's like YouTube page that they go through like thoroughly how to go through Painter and understand a lot of things, but I'll try to explain everything as best I can as I go along here. So within our mesh that we need, it's going to need our mesh that we just saved out of Maya. So we'll go to Select and we'll navigate to where we saved it out, which was on my desktop. So we have our proxy car OBJ. We can compute tangent space per whatever we need for normals, so I'm going to leave that as is by default. And I'm going to start out with 2048 for our document resolution. Now you can also import images that you may have baked out from either Designer or from Maya or any other XNormal, whatever programs you might use to bake out your details in a high resolution mesh. So we'll go ahead. We have no materials whatsoever or meshes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with a blank slate, push OK, and our model is now into Substance Painter. We'll check over it one more time, make sure everything is where it needs to be in terms of viewing. And alright, so the bottom we're not going to worry about too much. I'll fix that in a minute. Like, it's going to be the same process as the bumpers, flipping it backwards. So next time I stop a video, I'll make sure I flip that around for you guys. So we're not going to focus too much on the bottom anyways. So it looks like everything's good to go on this vehicle. If I want to see what it looks in different lighting situations, I can hold down Shift and I can right click and I can rotate around, and it rotates the background for me. So another thing I can do too that would really help me painting this is I can take an HDR image out of Unreal and I can bring that into here, and I can actually get a better idea of what the lighting situation is going to look when it comes to viewing the material on this vehicle. But I have another video for that, so if you want to reference it, go ahead. I'm not going to be doing that through this. I'm just going to go with the standard here, and I'm just going to get the main maps done for this set of videos. So, and as you can see from when the materials that we assigned this vehicle in Maya, it's separated out. So we had that separate second material for the windows, and we can see we have two texture set lists here. We have initial shading group, which is the vehicle, and we have a Lambert, which was the one for our windows. So if we are painting and let's say we have our main vehicle texture set selected, if we're painting, we can't paint on the windows. They'll just disappear from our viewport, and it comes back and nothing has been affected. It goes the same way if it's the other way around. Like, you can paint on the windows, can't paint the car. So we're only going to be focusing on the vehicle right now, or the actual body. So what we're going to do next is we need to go ahead and I'm not going to be working in height, but I'm going to be working in a normal map. So within the height, I'm going to get rid of this channel here. And you can add more channels if you wish. These are all, by coming up to the texture set settings, this is where you have all your setups for your channels. The standard channels that it'll start you with are base color, height, roughness, and metallic. Height will also translate over to normals when you go to save this out. So if you want to, you can get rid of this and change this to normal map by, switching out to normal here with the adding maps. And what that'll do is it'll modify your properties over here on the right side. So if I'm in this fill layer and I come down to the scroll bar, you'll see on the bottom of this we have our material of color, height, the roughness, and normal. If I were to say get rid of the height, it only has 3 channels that are available now. So let's add that height back in. Again, well, at this point we can add it on normal since we got rid of it. Let's not do that. Let's play it safe and let's go with the height. Where's it? Height? Alright, and you'll see that it brought it back again for us. So now we're dealing with the color, height, roughness, and metallic. So, with those channels done, we have our size of 2048 that we set. We have, let's see, everything else. I think everything else is good to go at this point. So what I'm wanting to do is, the first thing I want to do is I want to start filling this thing up. So I'll come into the layer stack and try to think of this layer stack If you've ever worked in Photoshop, it's almost pretty much the same. So you should feel right at home if you've done enough Photoshop work. So I'm going to delete that layer, and I want to add in a fill layer. Now this fill layer is going to be, I think it's just standard base gray. So if I change it around, it'll see that the color will change. So it's filling everything that's in this initial shading group. So I know that for the material, I want this to be a car paint layer. So let's rename that to the car paint fill. And let's find a car paint material in which they do have. So if you double click on this material, it'll actually fill in this material fill layer with that material. So it'll fill up this layer with that material. So what we'll do next is, this roughness is really high and out of control. I just really want to retain a couple of channels. I don't need the normal information. That could be on a different layer itself. If you want to see what the effects of this material is having on your overall vehicle, right now we're in material preview mode. You can get to this by pushing M on the keyboard, and this is viewing everything on your screen at one time. Now if you push C on your keyboard, this will cycle through the different channels. So as you see, you have your base color, which is this flat red. You have your height, which we have no height information. Actually, correction, we do. It's just very low, as it looks like it looks like it's very staticky. And if we go to our roughness, you'll see that's halfway rough and metallic. Excuse me. So let's push M to go back to viewing everything again, and let's take down this normal information. We really don't need it. I think we can also just toggle that height information off too, just by hitting the height button. So all we're going to be filling with this paint fill layer is just our color, our roughness, and metal, and that's what we want. So scrolling down a little bit more, we can't always bring the height back. Let's say you wanted divots in the paint, like for flakes or whatnot, but this is just too big. Then in your properties here, you can up your UV scaling. So if you just up the scale of your UVs, you'll see everything begins to shrink down. And I want to say at about, yeah, let's leave it at like an even 35. So I can click this pen tool and I can just type in manual numbers. And it's locked too, so it's uniform. So it's going to be uniformly scaled. And if you were to disable this, then you'd be able to offset your scales. So that might end up in some stretching on your the actual normal maps. Okay, so that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of breakup on the paint, which definitely helps keeping that normal information there. So kind of backtracked on myself. Now next, what we want to do is we don't want to paint everything. We only want to paint the actual body. So the next part is the actual one I'm going to be using quite a bit as I go to paint this vehicle. I'm going to be using alpha maps or masks. Excuse me. So first thing I'll do is I'll right click on this layer, and I'll add in a black mask. Now you notice that everything disappeared because it's completely filled with a black mask. The black mask is making everything invisible. So we need to bring some of these parts back. So what I'll do is right now we are on mask selection edit. So if we click on the red fill layer again, now we're in fill layer. So let's click back on our mask, and now we're in mask edit mode. You can actually use a image if you have any specific masks that you may have baked out. You can input these here, but we're going to be painting with white, so we want to bring certain parts of this mask back in. And with selection mode, you can either paint this in, which would be cool. I mean, for certain parts, we definitely might use this later. But you may have also noticed too that it's mirroring itself, so I'll explain that in a second. We'll just deal with masks right now. But there's also a shell selection. So based on the UV shells, we can come up to the top here to the geometry decal button. And what that'll do is bring up our different geometry decals on which we can select. So if we are in the Verte Selection mode, if we select the Vert by clicking and dragging, it'll actually select the Vert by actually acting like this is triangulated. You can select a face. You can select an entire shell. I'm having some trouble doing it through the viewport here, so I can show you another way. By going through F1, F2, and F3, you can change your viewport. So on F1, we're viewing our UV shell. So if I select the shell, it's going to select everything that's attached to that. Now if I select just the UV, it'll select just that UV shell itself and not everything that's close by. Now instead of having to select every single shell by itself, we can actually turn on symmetry mode, which is found right up here, and you can change it from X, Y, or Z. But we're going to be working in the X the most since we're mirroring it side to side. So selecting our different parts of our shell, we can then begin to fill in the parts that we want for the car paint fill. Okay, well I got some pipes in there which I got some of the exhaust which I don't want. So here's the exhaust here. So if I want to isolate these out but I don't want the whole shell, I can go back down to black for color selection and I can begin to select the actual faces. So I'm going to separate this out for an easy selection, and alright, basically we're going to be doing the same thing I think to all the pipes there. We're going to have this upper piece, it's going to be painted, and this wheel well is going to be matching the same color as that. So let's go ahead and continue painting. Let's take care of the rest of these pipes now. Alright, here we go. Oh, I'm on white, so nothing, or black, nothing's going to happen. So now I've selected that whole fill again. Back to face selection. And our exhaust pipe is back to what it was before. I don't want the undercarriage painted either. So let's go to black. I'm going to paint in this wheel well. Should be mirroring it over, which it's not. I think we'll have because I'm not sure exactly. It's no big deal since we're doing fill paints. It shouldn't take us too long. Let's go back to black and do face selection and get rid of that selection along with anything that's on our exhaust pipes, because sometimes this has a fall off value. Alright, let's do this quickly. Let me get past this part here. Alright, so I keep selecting the actual model through here. So one way to alleviate this is either turn off symmetry or go by shell selection, which is what seems to be working now. Go ahead and paint that back out. Got to be kind of careful with how much I'm actually grabbing here. No, we don't want the tailpipe. And we don't want that, but we can always fill that in later with something else. Fill that in with another different fill layer. Okay, it's acting a little strange right now, so let's just do UV shells only. Get that back to black. Alright, so UV shells are beginning to work a lot better now. You can even select it within the viewport, which definitely helps at times, which I think I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go back to F2 mode to full screen this. Go back to white. And I'm going to fill in the parts that I know I want to have as car paint. I'll have the wheel well, the cyclers there going to be filled. I think we're almost done here. Go ahead and paint that back to black again, and we're going to fill in those pipes, the exhaust pipes. Alright. Okay, our color fill is just about done, so let's go back to the back here, and we're going to turn some stuff invisible now. The undercarriage is completely filled up with paint color, which we don't want. Okay, almost done. Now let's do Verte Selection to be a little bit more precise. Again, it's breaking it up like it's a triangle. Not a big deal. Gives us a little bit better selection to make sure that we're not actually accidentally painting on everything else that we don't want to paint on. It's done here, and then I'll probably end up stopping the video, and then the next part we'll go over getting some of the other extra fill layers in with some chrome. And I'm hopefully within this video series too, since I'm kind of making this up as I go, I'll try to turn this vehicle into a cab variation as well, since we are needing a cab. Alright. I think our car is good to go now. Let's see how we're looking on time here. Alright, so our first fill layer is in. The next fill layer, we're going to go ahead and we'll take care of some of the chrome fills that are going to happen on this vehicle, as well as some of the getting some normal information to break up these headlights if we can get the time in there. Alright, so I'll stop the video and I'll be right back.